Let me preface this by saying that this story happened when I was a lot younger and less worldly wise about the creeps of the world. Had I known then what I know now, this story would have ended before it began. The story begins when I, a 16-year-old girl, got bored one day and decided to download a version of the Tinder app. After a couple of swipes, a guy's face popped up. And what intrigued me was that he did not have his name in his profile. Think M. Spark instead of Mark. Now, he didn't seem like a rapper, so I swiped right out of curiosity. We matched straight away and began talking. Just run-of-the-mill conversation. What do you do for fun? Been to any parties recently? That kind of thing. After a bit of digging, it emerged that he went to the school at the bottom of my road, so we arranged to meet at the weekend. At this point, I didn't even have his name, but felt too awkward to ask it after we'd been talking all this time. Saturday came, and Mark turns up about 20 minutes late. He's carrying a rose, presumably to make up for the fact that he's only around 5'2", which had been cleverly omitted in the photos he posted. I'm not usually into short guys, but I humoured him, and we went and sat in a park in the town centre to talk. We talked for about 2 hours, about everything, and nothing at all, until Mark asked me if he could be so bold as to kiss me. I was flattered, but declined. He persisted, saying it was very important, until I lost my temper and asked him why. He explained to me that he suffered from sex-based migraines, and if he was deprived of sexual contact for too long, he would get an excruciating headache that could render him immobile for 48 hours. Although I was naive, I was not stupid enough to believe his nonsense, but wanted to get home quickly after this meeting had turned sour. I leant over, gave him a quick peck on the cheek, and hurried away into the piercing parlour across the road, where the owners knew me and talked with me for an hour until I felt secure enough to get the bus home. I thought this was the end of the encounter, and travelled home calmly. Me and my mother have never had a strong relationship, and I didn't want to talk to her about it, so when she asked about my day, I just brushed it off and said I had met a friend for lunch. After dinner, I went upstairs to my room and pulled out my phone. My stomach dropped. There was a Snapchat notification from M. Sparks. My username must have been on the profile I set up on Tinder. How stupid of me. I think back to now, for I could have avoided a good many unsolicited dick pics otherwise. I gingerly opened it. It was a 10-second video of him lying on his bed at home, looking dazed and confused. The caption? Look what you do to me. I realized that he was actually faking a migraine and filming it to send it to me. I blocked the account and sat watching TV for a while. No harm done, I thought. Wrong again. From knowing where I went to school and the fact that I have an unusually spelled first name, a friend request came in from Mark a couple of days later. I declined, and he sent it again. I was a little weirded out, but he seemed to have mutual friends with me, and from his profile, I could learn more about him, i.e., how to avoid him. Big mistake number 2 past me. The messages started pouring in, starting with, I really enjoyed today. Hope we can see each other soon, and ending with such gems as, I need you. I laughed and blocked him again. One day, as I was getting my bus to school, a familiar face smiled at me from the bus stop. It was Mark again, this time with his friends. I wasn't suspicious. My bus stop was opposite his school, and I vaguely knew one of his friends, so I smiled, talked and made pleasantries until my bus came. This was to be my first of many encounters with Mark. all of which I brushed off as coincidence. He lived and went to school in the same part of town as I did. It was uncommon for me to go a day without seeing someone I knew. The last encounter I had with Mark was on my way to meet a friend. The week before, I had severely twisted my knee playing netball and was struggling to walk from my bus stop to where my friend, with a car, had arranged to meet me. As I turned the corner, who should appear but Mark, smiling widely and greeting me with a wave. He asked what had happened to my leg. I told him it had been a netball injury. He asked where I was going. I told him I was meeting my friend. He asked what time I was meeting her. In about an hour. He said his house was right around the corner, and putting his hand firmly on my lower back, he offered that I could wait there with a cup of tea until my friend came. I tried to protest, saying I would be fine waiting in a cafe. But Mark insisted and, half guided, half pushed me to his house. When we got in, I asked if I could use the bathroom, to which he said yes and showed me to. I texted my friend after locking myself in there, and said that a guy I vaguely knew had let me wait in his house and could she pick me up from there. I didn't tell her the whole story, as I didn't want to worry her and or have her phone my mother, with whom I would have met a worse fate than with Mark. Mark then knocks on the door, asking if I was okay. I said yes, but that I'd be a couple of minutes, and he agreed to wait downstairs for me. When I let myself out of the bathroom, I walked downstairs to find Mark lying motionless on the floor of the living room, kitchen. I panicked, thinking something had happened to him, and went to check his pulse. As I reached down, his hand shot out to feel my breast through my shirt, and he weakly croaked out, "Need release." I batted his hand away and tried to stand up to get him a glass of water. "Need you feel me?" His trousers, which I had not looked at until now, were unbuttoned, and he was stroking himself. Eyes now open and locked on me. I freaked out. I ran up the stairs and struggled with the lock on the door, hearing his slow footsteps getting closer. Just as I was opening the door, his voice called out from the other end of the corridor. "Could you at least clean me over then?" I whisked the door open and slammed it behind me. Almost in tears at both the pain in my knee and the sheer weirdness of the situation. After limping a couple of rows down from his house, I rang my friend and said there was nothing to worry about, but could she please hurry. She was right around the corner at this point, and we drove off with me telling her everything in between my shaky breaths. The weirdest thing about this story? A couple of days later I ran into Mark again. He acted like nothing had happened that day, offered me some gum, and then caught a bus from my bus stop. It was almost as if he didn't remember anything from that day. And I sure as hell wish I didn't. Touch wood, I haven't seen him around in some time. But that could be because he's gone off to university. He's the right age to have. So, migraine Mark, please let's not meet again. But I hope you can find someone who can sexually cure your headaches. It was spring of last year, one of the first beautiful days we had had here in western New York. After a rough, brutal and cold winter, the sun was out. Most of the snow melted away and the temperature had finally risen above 40 degrees. Me and my two friends, Nicole and Gabrielle, had planned to make the most of it and go driving around and take some photos. We were really into photography and exploring really dingy, overrun areas of the towns surrounding the city. I personally had always liked to explore south of the city. It was desolate, creepy, and seemed to present a lot of opportunity for getting some real good and gritty photos. We planned to meet up, and I would drive. Now, my car wasn't the best to take on mini trips. She was a 2004, rusting, had transmission issues, and after a while of driving, would take a while to start up. However, I always liked driving since I got to control where we were going and where we would stop. And also the most important, control the music. So we're driving around, blasting music and having casual conversation, here and there. It's a beautiful day, and the vibes are great. Our first intended stop was to check out an abandoned church. Me and Gabrielle had checked it out before over the winter. At the time, the snowpack was literally about 3 feet, so we weren't able to really get in and really see the place. However, what we were able to scope out was really unsettling. There was an abandoned bus outside the church that was all rusted and locked up. And walking the perimeter, trudging through the snow, we came across a side door that was open, revealing a room with a mattress and some scattered garbage. Off to the side in this room was another door that was closed and read, "Jesus is here," on the front of it. The vibes were really unnerving, so we got out of there immediately. The whole time we felt like we were being watched. We had talked about going back if we had more people with us, and when there wasn't so much snow. So as we start to approach where this place was, we notice it's completely gone. No bus, no church, nothing. We later came to find out it was torn down. We were a little bummed, but also relieved to have avoided any potential weirdness. We continued to drive, stopping at random places on the side of the road and snapping a few pictures. We eventually went to a really cool and creepy beach, came across an abandoned train station, and a few weird abandoned factory-type places. Luckily, we didn't run into any trouble or feel any bad vibes with these places. We were really stoked about the amount of photos we got and all the cool shit we got to see. We must have been out for about 5 to 6 hours, and the sun was starting to set. We were probably an hour away from home and decided we should wrap it up, get some food, start heading back. Driving back, I realized that I'm not exactly sure where we are and how to get back onto a main road. So I plug my address into my phone and get GPS directions to take us the right way. The directions take us down this really interesting road in the middle of the Indian reservation. There were a bunch of old, beaten down houses that clearly nobody was living in, as trees were growing through them and branches and vines engulfed most of them. I really wanted to stop and take a few night shots of these houses, as I think they look cool and creepy. So we pull into the driveway of one of the houses. The driveway was all gravel, and the house was pretty far up the road, but I made sure to park more toward the street, just in case things got super creepy, and we had to make a quick getaway. It was getting really dark. There was barely any light coming from the street or surrounding houses, as most of them seemed to be abandoned. So we had to use the flash on our phones to kind of light our path. The house is completely surrounded by brush and bushes and old furniture that seemed to have been thrown out the windows. It was some real Texas Chainsaw crap. We all got really uneasy and decided to stay a little bit just to get a decent amount of photos. Once we decided that we had enough, we head back to the car. As we're about to get in, a truck pulls up blocking the driveway, and ultimately blocking us from leaving. We all immediately freeze as this dude's intentions are obviously immediately known. He rolls down his passenger side window. At this point, it's completely dark, and we cannot see inside his truck or see his face. and asks us what we were doing there. We all answer that we were just taking some quick pictures and were intending on leaving at the moment. "Pictures of what?" he asks. The tone in his voice is very hostile and sinister. At this point, Nicole and Gabrielle both get into my car, leaving me outside, having to talk and answer to this guy. "Pictures of the house," I answer. My voice was clearly trembling, but he mustn't have been able to tell we were all scared shitless. "For what?" "A school project," I lied. "What project?" "For a photo project," I lied again.
"For where?"
"Buffalo State College."
"For what?"
"A project on houses." During this exchange, he was rummaging through something in the passenger seat. He appeared to be writing something down as well, and using what looked like the light from his cell phone to look at what he was writing.
"What's so special about this house?"
he said, emphasizing this as if he has some sort of connection to it. "It's just interesting and looked cool," I say as I start to open my car door. I look into my car and see my friends literally on the verge of tears. Gabrielle turns to me and says, "We need to go. Get in the car and let's go." I look at her with concern, as there isn't any way to go as he has us blocked in. And on either side of the driveway, there's brush and very muddy swamp terrain.
"You know you're not supposed to be here, right?"
he says.
"There are signs all over saying so."
I look around. There was a sign or two on some trees. We hadn't noticed them before, unfortunately. "I'm sorry, we didn't know," I say. The man starts to rummage again. Every time he went to grab something or make a noise, I thought for sure he was going to pull out a gun or something. He pulled out what looked like his phone again. He starts talking to someone to come meet him where we are. It didn't seem like he was talking to the police because the conversation was entirely too casual and chummy almost. "Look, I'm sorry. We're going now," I say, heading into my car. And then, what came out of his mouth next was the most scary thing another human being has ever said to me.
"You're not going anywhere."
I could imagine the evil, sinister grin on his face while saying it. A sudden rush of adrenaline came upon me, and I quickly get in my car, slam the door shut, and lock everything. I go to start my car, and she's not starting. We all begin to panic and start cursing. I keep trying, knowing my car does this all the time, and usually, by the third try, she gets going. I keep looking out of my rear view mirror to see if the guy is still in his truck, what he's doing. He was still on the phone. Thankfully, I get her started on the third try. Next problem. There isn't anywhere to go. I know to my right. The path to escape was clear, but if I escape that way, I end up behind the truck, which seemed like a really crazy idea and scenario. I look to the left. Brush, mud, garbage. If I escape this way, I risk getting stuck, and then we're really done for. I take my chances on going left. I put my car in drive and turn the steering wheel all the way to the left and slam on the gas, driving through the mud and brush. We peeled right out of there. Luckily, there were a few cars coming down the road, and we were able to speed out of there in front of them, creating some distance between us and the truck, if he were to follow us. I had never driven so fast in my life. We were all screaming and overwhelmed with such relief. My friends kept looking back to see if he was following us, but there were quite a few cars behind us to tell if he was or not. Before we know it, we make it back onto a main road, where we're surrounded by stores and restaurants and a bunch of cars, and feel much safer and head home in one piece. Now, We're definitely more careful to investigate our surroundings when we go out to take photos in sketchy places. However, something about this guy didn't seem like he wanted to reinforce the fact that this place was a no trespassing zone, but instead wanted to scare, torment us, and who even knows? Dude in the truck and his potential friends. Let's not ever meet again. This took place about 6 months ago now, I think. In order for this story to make sense, I have to explain a little bit about my apartment. I live in an old house that was renovated and divided into 3 apartments. 1 basement suite, 1 on the main floor, and 1 little one in the attic. I live in the attic apartment with my boyfriend. The entrance to the attic apartment is rather difficult to find, and either my boyfriend or I often have to go out and collect our pizza from confused delivery guys, because even with our instructions, they can't figure out how to get to us. In order to get to our place, you would have to squeeze through the narrow space in between the 2 cars parked in the house's driveway, stumble over some uneven stepping stones and long grass, a little tricky to navigate in the dark if you aren't used to it, open the gate, go down the path, and then to your right you would find a tall set of wooden stairs leading up to the side of the house to our attic door at the top. Now, I used to get home from work around 9:30 p.m, so it was around this time when I came home this one night, went through the gate, and was about at the stairs when I stopped dead. There was a man sprawled out on his front across the bottom of the stairs, apparently asleep or passed out. He was lying vertically, and he had one arm stretched up above his head like it was reaching out. It looked really creepy. His head was down, so I couldn't see his face. I was instantly freaked out. I had never seen this guy in my life, and I had no idea how he had stumbled his way to our stairs in the first place. In the dark and presumably drunk. My only logical assumption, at this point, was that he had passed out drunk. He didn't seem to be hurt, didn't have a scratch on him, and his clothes were perfectly clean. I could see that he was breathing, which is a plus, right? But his body was blocking the stairs, and there was no way I could get up to the apartment without risking waking him. And I just got an incredibly bad feeling at the thought of trying to walk past him. I was too scared to touch him or try waking him up. I just had that bad gut feeling in spades. So I just quietly backed away, went back to the front of the house and phoned my boyfriend, Tim. Thankfully he answered. I asked him if he was home, and then I told him about the guy in the steps. Tim must have thought I was joking or something. He told me there couldn't be a guy in our steps because he had just come home literally minutes before, and there had been nobody there, or any sign of anyone. He also hadn't heard any noises or anything from outside. From inside our apartment, we can always hear someone coming up the steps, and we can usually hear the gate shut too. So one would assume the sound of a large, muscular, drunk man stumbling through the gate, then falling face first on our steps, would have made some noise. Apparently not. I insisted that there was seriously a guy sprawled out on the stairs, and I was too scared to try and go around him. After opening the door and looking out, Tim could see I was entirely correct. Not sure what else to do, Tim called the police, just the non-emergency line, not 911, as we didn't think it warranted that. I stood in front of the house while we waited for the cops. For some reason, they ended up sending a cop car, an ambulance, and a fire truck, with all the sirens blaring, even though we hadn't reported it as an emergency. The paramedics were first on the scene, so I directed them to the side of the house where the guy was, and I came around to watch. Although he hadn't moved throughout the deafening noise of the sirens, he seemed to wake up fairly quickly when the paramedics shook him. He stood up on his own, steadily, and didn't appear to be impaired. At this point, the paramedics asked me to go back to the front, out of earshot, and they asked the man questions. When I went back to the front of the house, there was a blonde woman standing in the driveway, watching the commotion. She asked me what was going on, and I explained it to her. I said I felt awkward to have caused so much drama by calling the police, but we just couldn't think of anything else to do, and we had a bad feeling about the whole thing. She immediately reassured me that I'd done the right thing, saying, "Oh no, he had to go." She then told me that she was the neighbor, and the guy had been lurking around her property earlier. She said she had chased him away, but he had come back until her dad, the property owner, had come and told him to leave. So I have no idea why he was creeping around our two houses, or how he wound up passed out on our steps. Either the cops or the paramedics took the guy away, quietly, and we never found out anything more about the situation. But it really creeped us out. This is most likely just extreme paranoia, but I really got the feeling he was just waiting for me to get too close to him. There was something almost staged about the way he was positioned on the stairs. It gives me shivers just remembering it.
Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to episode 39. No major updates in the channel at the moment. Things are just going to continue as normal. Though I hope you don't mind this extra True Scary Stories video on Friday. I didn't have the time to make arrangements to get paranormal stories, but I figure these ones always go down well, so it'd be worth putting an extra one up. I have a little more recording to do tonight, so I'm not going to linger here too long. I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate all your support, and you may have noticed I recently passed the 4,000 mark, and I'm very, very grateful for that. Next up, 5,000, then the world. Or maybe I'll just get to 5,000 first. The world can wait. Okay. Anyway, until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.